It's time for our hashtag segment. For that, we're going to bring in Landon Swan. He's a co-founder at Likefolio. Welcome back to the show, Landon.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're talking a big one. We're talking Apple. I heard some metrics that they're selling the iPhone 15 well. I'm hearing it's overheating. By the way, I just got mine delivered about 2 hours ago, my new one, because my screen's cracked on mine. But Landon, this is an ecosystem type of company where once you're in, it's hard to get out of that. As far as innovation goes, maybe they're behind Samsung, but they do it the right way. Great balance sheet. I mean, what kind of data do you have for us here on Apple?
Sure. I mean, this is one of the best companies in the world, maybe the best. It depends on who you talk to. So there's a lot of good things about Apple. And yeah, they just had their keynote on September 13th, so just a couple of weeks ago. And that's something that we watch very closely at Likefolio. We've always used that as a gauge of consumer interest in the future sales because people talk at that moment whether or not they're going to be upgrading when they start, actually selling them like you're getting yours now. So we've got really good insights as far as forward-looking insights on Apple. We love that they do this keynote event. And when, we look at the event in particular, I think the highlight, of course, was the iPhone 15. They had some upgrades to new editions of the Watch 9, the Ultra 2, and then, of course, a little bit with the AirPods as well. But I think the iPhone is the key. I mean, that makes up the bulk of their revenue. And so we really kind of focus in on that. They've got 4 different iPhones that they're releasing, the 15, the Plus, the Pro, and the Max. And when you look at this time during the keynote versus last year, you can see it's very, very spiky, right? I mean, this is about as cyclical as a company gets for Likefolio because they release everything at that keynote. So you can see when the keynote was last year, you can see where it was this year. And we're up about 3% on a year-over-year basis. That's not huge. It's nothing to, buy calls or anything like that. I mean, we're not predicting that Apple's going to do extremely well, but it's good. I mean, we've had reports in the past where mentions were down like 30 or 40% on a year-over-year basis, and they ended up warning and selling off tremendously. So this is not going to be one of those years. If you're an Apple investor, I think you can rest easy that this is a decent year. It's not going to be bad. And they've got a lot of upgrades. They don't have anything amazing coming out. Like they're not wowing people maybe like Meta did, but they've got a good offering of products with the iPhone 15 ranging from $800 up to $1,200 basically. I think a lot of the upgrades come in the form of better camera, which is always going to wow people as sort of a viral way, right? You're going to show off your photos and yours look better than the person next to you because they've got an iPhone 12 or maybe they've got a Samsung, so that now they want to buy an iPhone 15. Now when we look at the happiness, you mentioned the overheating. There's reports of this phone getting up to 116 degrees, which sounds pretty hot to me. I don't think I'd want to hold that or have that in my pocket. We've actually haven't seen a big impact on happiness. So since the announcement, iPhone happiness has gone up about 4%. So it's gone up 4%. Now that people are starting to get them, we'll see. We're going to see if the overheating is really a big factor. Maybe there's just 1 or 2 phones. I mean, maybe, I have no idea. Maybe they left it out in the sun or whatever. We'll see. But as the masses start to report that they got their phones and they're starting to use it, that is something we're absolutely watching, that happiness score and claims of overheating, because the last thing that Apple would want is some kind of recall or something like that. So that would be a big problem, obviously. And then, you've got the watch coming out. They've got a new S9 chip that's 60% faster. It's got health data integrations with Siri. And, they've got the Ultra 2. I think that's up to $800 for that watch. And the basic watch is $400 now. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. Overall, I'd say we're pretty slightly positive on Apple here. We do like that, from an investor standpoint, I love that it's kind of pulled back a little bit if you're talking about entry point. I mean, if you go back to the stock chart, it was, from January till August, it was almost no down days. It was just up, 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 up. And then now we're kind of sold off a little bit, and now we're sideways. And we're down a little bit. So I think that expectations are likely lower. And I don't think they're going to have a bad consumer reaction to this keynote event. It's not going to be blockbuster. It's not going to be amazing, but it's not bad. It's better than last year. So I think investors at this price, I think they're in at a good value here.
All right, Landon, that all sounds good to me. And, one of the things I'd follow up with is Dan Ives, Wedbush analyst, basically said that demand for the Apple's iPhone 15 right now is outstripping the 14 by about 10 to 12%. Is that kind of what you're seeing from your mentions as well, too?
We don't have that high. We've got a little bit lower. We're single digits. I think we're plus 3% on a year-over-year basis, but we're also very early on in the data. I mean, we're measuring from spike to spike. There's also the width of that spike as well, like not just the height of the spike, but the width. So the hype is still not died down. So we're still, we want to see how all of the area under the circle, if you will, to sort of use a math term, compares to that of last year. But height of the spike to height of the spike is about a 3% increase.
Yeah, and you talked about that. I just ran through iPhone 15 Pro Max. It delivers in 5 weeks. So the lead times are getting wider here, Landon. But when you look at this, batteries last a little bit longer. You don't have that hype as much as you did maybe 5 years ago when a new one, and there's lines outside of these doors. You can order it online and stuff like that. But you mentioned happiness, and I think that's one of the things. Do you look at any of your data and say, oh, this person's never getting out of this Apple ecosystem because of the products and the innovation that they do?
Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, it's a very, very sticky product set. I mean, just like you talked about, once you're in, all of a sudden the AirPods work easier if you have one, and the watch works better. Everything works well together, and then it works well with your friends and family. And then if someone with an Android joins your group chat, everybody's kind of like, oh, who's the green bubble, right? By the way, I used to be that guy. I changed over to iPhone a couple years ago, and now I notice it. I do think. It bothers me that they do that because I'm sure they can integrate with Samsung's data just as well, but it's intentional what they're doing, but whatever. That's fine. So yeah, it is a very sticky system. It's a very sticky ecosystem, excuse me. And once you're in, you're kind of in forever, but they don't have the hype of the newest, latest, greatest thing, right? I don't know when we're going to see that. I think it's probably going to have something to do with augmented reality, where you're holding up your phone and you can interact with things in a better way, sort of like what Meta displayed. And so I think when we get there might be some hype, but right now it's just, better, faster, a little bigger, better camera. It's kind of the same old, but it's still a very strong product. And so, I think the consumer base is going to be excited about it. And of course, there's always that conspiracy theory. Everybody's phone starts working a little bit slower right around the keynote. So maybe that's going to drive some upgrades. We'll see. But yeah, it's a very sticky product, and nobody's really leaving, and they're only pulling more of their friends and family in.
Yeah, Landon, stock down 8.5% so far this month, basically 4.5-month lows. You guys are just neutral on this one?
No, actually, you know what? I'd say we're leaning a little bit more bullish. So just overall, we like the keynote reaction. If this stock was trading at those August highs right now, I'd probably be a little bit more neutral. But I want to see it get back up to there before I would shift from bullish to neutral. So I think we're a little bit undervalued right now, oversold, if you will. And I do think that once these numbers start coming out, investors are going to be pleased. It's not going to be gangbusters, but it's going to be definitely not disappointing and a nice step forward for the company.
All right, great stuff, great data as always, Landon. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your weekend.
Yep, you too. That's Landon Swan, co-founder at Likefolio, breaking down the